Welcome to NeoCon's 2025 CEU session, Precision Prefab, Design and Construction for Remote Locale Luxury Wellness. Presenting are Alexander Zilberman and Edward Geyman. As a reminder, to earn CEU credits, attendees must stay logged on for 60 minutes and complete the 10-question quiz after the session.
Hello, welcome everyone. I'm Alex Zilberman, Principal Architect of Alexander Zilberman Architecture, AZA. And this is Edward Geyman, CEO of Carvart.
Hello.
And we are co-presenting on the topic of prefab precision and design for remote luxury and wellness venues. At AZA, we specialize in designing and execution of high-end retail stores, and we collaborate with luxury brands. And we also work in corporate, residential, hospitality, and wellness globally. Acting as design architect and architect of record for retail and lifestyle brands such as Versace and Aston Martin, as well as wellness and hospitality brands such as Equinox and Soho House. And as luxury experts, our clients are particularly appreciative of our holistic approach and our systematized approach to design, which includes understanding how to leverage off-site fabrication and integrate it into the design process. And that allows for achieving consistency in high quality, precision, repeatability, and executability, which has a high value in retail.
Hi guys, Edward Geyman here. I'm excited to be here to co-host with Alex. NeoCon has a special place in my heart. I've been coming to this show and presenting at the show and showcasing for probably about 20 years. So I definitely appreciate the opportunity to be here. My company, Carvart, has started about 25 years ago, and we originally from Ukraine as an immigrant that came here back in 1990, and being associated with the glass trade now for 4 generations and almost 100 years, I'm very proud and excited to pass along my trade. My great-grandfather was, the Charlie Chaplin with the backpack and glass, back in the 30s. And here we are taking the glass and much more, as Carvart does, into the future and into this modern design. And now we're talking about pre-construction. So today, Carvart is much more than an architectural glass company. We do focus on prefabricated systems and materials, very complex architectural and engineered solutions. And really, we work, with people like Alex and with, major design firms to take their ideas and really make them into reality. Major projects that we're involved with on transportation side, such as airports, Newark Airport, LaGuardia, currently JFK, Houston Airport, Austin Airport, numerous airports around the country. We are excited to be participating in a lot of corporate and commercial environments, hospitality projects like Plaza Hotel, Baccarat Hotel, and major museums such as the Museum of Natural History. So excited to be here. Thanks for having us.
So today we'll be talking about a hybrid approach. And we'll be talking about prefabricated and modular systems and leveraging those in design and project delivery and mixing those with some traditional project delivery methods we learned from retail and commercial projects, and also applying those learnings in methods for luxury, remote, residential, and hospitality projects. In retail, luxury brands really compete for the best street and mall locations and the most memorable environments that are on brand, making the most impact. And these projects have fixed budgets. They require lots of buy-in from stakeholders, including the tenants, including the landlords, sometimes including communities and cities, and also lots and lots of approvals from the executives. Those are approvals for budgets and schedules. And so we end up with really fixed opening days for the stores. And the openings are tied to other brand activities and other business activities like holiday seasons, events, product launches, and those always have fixed dates that are announced to the public. So therefore, on time and on budget really is a measure of success. And the traditional design, build, delivery methods and ways of doing things, especially nowadays, just come with too much uncertainty. And so we need to rely on a more systematized approach, which means leveraging prefabrication. And that is for predictability in all areas of the project. So the value proposition for the luxury brands and design is to, one, articulate the brand, two, adapt and maintain the brand identity across contexts, across continents, a curated luxury holistic environment and a guest experience. And of course, we want to foster a comfort, a sense of wonder, a sense of well-being. And this is because the brands really want their guests to feel good and really well taken care of in their spaces.
So, as you know, as Alex mentioned, obviously, you know, the hybrid approach could be perceived in two different ways. Hybrid meaning you can have things that are prefabricated in separate sections, or you can have items prefabricated in complete modules and complete larger scale environments. So our experience came originally from doing a lot of work in transportation. And as I mentioned, we've done a lot of airports and continue to do so. And in airports, you obviously have to deal with a lot of complex logistics. You have to deal with labor on site. You have to deal with very complicated products. So we started bringing that approach into many of our product lines. So what used to be, as you can see here on the top image, you know, a barrier, glass railing barrier, which would imply having posts and having special shoes and then glass being glazed on site. We took a different approach and we said, well, why can't we prefabricate this along with the hardware, with completely engineered, tested at the factory, beautifully assembled, controlled environment, and be able to implement it and just install on site. So that's exactly what we did. And this is where kind of our head and our direction have started shifting, is into this prefabricated, almost unitized approach, as we see typically on the exterior of the buildings. But why can't we bring this onto the interior of the building? And this is kind of, I think, the direction that, you know, things are heading in. So here is an example of, again, this is more simplified version, right? But this is the large scale panels, which weigh about 1,000 pounds, right? Which typically would require, you know, many men to handle it. You have to be very careful because now you're setting glass into a metal structure versus having these large panels already prefabricated and structurally glazed into the assembly, into the attachment, and all you're doing is hooking basically a panel as you would hang a piece of artwork. So then we took this approach even further and we said, well, why can't you also prefabricate actual plumbing? Why can't you prefabricate actual electrical? Why can we control this and test this all in the environment for large scale bathrooms? And that's exactly what we have done. So we have created a hybrid approach where you are prefabricating and controlling the outcome and prefabricating entire cubicles or sink sections along with the plumbing that's hidden behind the walls and at the same time accessible. Here's another example of how you can take the modular approach into now, again, larger metal structures. So what is you're seeing on the screen is in reality actually is a 45-foot diameter dome, that's decorative dome that's hung at a Hard Rock Hotel in Times Square. And the client was having issues where this item was coming in very expensive, obviously, for multiple reasons: the accessibility, the height, the size, the sheer, complexity. Material was originally specified as bronze. So being able to really think outside the box, and in this case, we created pizza slices to really build this entire dome. So all of the extrusions were curved and fabricated and welded all at the factory. Then we were able to plate the aluminum to actually replicate and look like antique brass by saving a lot of money for the client in this case, and then inserting all the different mesh panels and metal panels all inside these pizza slices, which then were able to be rigged up on site with ease of installation, and all the supports were already there. So much time was saved because material showed up and only took 3 days to erect the entire dome, while all the other trades were able to finish around, and this was literally treated as a piece of furniture that went in at last minute. And you can see it on the next slide, and kind of here's the finished product. Obviously, it's a little bit hard to understand the scale, but you can imagine, almost 50-foot diameter and 50-foot up in the air, just how complex would it be to assemble it with a traditional mechanical assembly, and laying in all the panels as you would typically do in a traditional construction.
Yes. So in retail, in commercial kind of projects, we're always aware, and we're always looking to really do our best in controlling pain points and reducing pain points, and leveraging prefab and modular helps control the outcomes and really mitigates the uncertainty, which it's really the uncertainty above anything else that is the biggest issue. That's the biggest pain point. And in retail, the hybrid prefab approach is more, I'd say more and more so, becoming the norm in luxury. And this is, again, because we are just so motivated to control details, and we're even more so motivated to control pain points, really for ourselves and our clients. For example, clients can accept high costs. They may not like it, but they can accept them. High costs and long lead times. But as long as the outcomes of cost, the quality of the finished product, and the schedule are predictable, or at least it can be set at the onset of the project, we've mitigated a lot of the pain in the uncertainty of those. And then, of course, incorporating prefab helps control uncertainty above anything else. And so we do the work of really investigating methods and systems and present them continuously to the clients. And we found that, by and large, as a rule of thumb, the more components that are made in a controlled environment, and the more any project becomes like an installation rather than an on-site build-out, the better the quality, the better the joinery, the more consistency we have in materials, which brands really value, because again, for them, it's those things: cost, quality, schedule, but also consistency in brand identity.
And I think that the shift has to be philosophical first and foremost, because I can tell you based on our experience when I was really infatuated with modular and prefabricated construction, and keeps telling my teams and our clients and people that were and many stakeholders, it was really rejected. It was like, there's no way you can do anything like this size. How would you do this? And I think the moment you shift the philosophy and the moment you shift your mindset, I think you can really find a way. Here in the screen, we're seeing an example of a large canopy that's probably protruding about 25 foot from the building, which typically in your regular construction, this would have, welded steel. All this would be welded and bolted on site and then cladded individually with polished nickel and glass and everything that comes with it. And we said, why? Why can we predict the outcome? Why can't we control the quality better? Why can we control the cost? So not to rely on, very expensive union labor on site. More importantly, when you're dealing with exterior application, we definitely cannot control the weather, right? So how can we possibly control the schedule? So this becomes an open, checkbook. This becomes an open schedule type of item, and really changing that perspective allows us to find different ways. So in this case, this particular item was installed literally within 2 hours versus probably taking about 3 months. So the other part is, how do you limit the material waste, right? How do we really affect and impact the environment by things that we can touch and that we can do? And I think one, important aspect is material waste, that people do not realize how much material waste, how much garbage gets taken out from a traditional job site. You really put your thoughts into it, and just how many containers are being taken out on a daily basis, whether it's a house or a big, corporate office build out or an entire building. So having to install things and getting materials longer, having to cut material on site, thus having to waste, losing material, right? That's a big pain point, especially for, contractors, is losing material getting damaged. So imagine controlling all of that, in the computerized into the factory environment where you can really utilize and reuse your offcuts, reduce obviously on-site mistakes, and really focus on standardized components and precision manufacturing, and really limit your material waste.
Yes. And so this is why we always resolve to reduce construction time on site, where we have less control over these things and things are more unpredictable. For example, in this case, the staircase was pre-manufactured, or the skeleton, I should say, of the staircase was pre-manufactured, and then it ended up being cladded on site in the walnut wood there. But you can imagine having to do all the welding on site in that small space with lots of subcontractors, which is also a safety hazard, because everyone can follow the rules, but things happen on site. And of course, we always resolve to minimize reliance on local subcontractors, right? And we try for fewer specialized on-site subtrades. And that also helps with cost and, as I mentioned, safety.
So we talked about hybrid, right, and what that means. And I think, what we have so far showcased is a lot of prefabricated components, prefabricated modules that still eventually get fabricated into an overall environment. What if we took it a step further? And what if we said, well, how do we prefabricate entire modules, right? So how do we prefabricate it with the exterior, with the interior, and really push the envelope and be able to place these units on site? And that's really what, in my experience, we've done is we had an amazing client, an amazing project where we built these basically glass pods that were utilized for pop-up restaurants, and we were able to fully engineer them, fully prefabricate them, more importantly, pre-install the kitchen equipment, including all the mechanicals, and that really pushed the envelope and gave us this insight and experience into how to take this to the next level. So think prefab, think homes, think office, think restaurants, think pop-ups, and we really want you to kind of open up your mind of what prefab can be. And to me, when I'm thinking of modular or prefab, I'm always thinking of these really kind of a cheap-looking, almost, kind of a mobile home, so to speak, right? And I think many of us have that connotation about this concept. And I think the key is to really take your designs, take modern designs, take, lots of light, lots of glass, and how do we make that now the new modular and the new prefab versus what is traditionally known?
Yes. And I would say the new luxury, because there is a stigma to it for sure, as you mentioned, mobile homes, etc. But I believe that it is through these systems that we can achieve a high level of luxury.
Absolutely.
And that goes for residential. So in retail and corporate, for our careers, really, we get conditioned because part of our job, as we mentioned earlier, is to be a good partner. And that means to try and mitigate pain points and unpredictability and things like that. And it's about time it gets where this kind of strategy gets applied to residential on a large scale. So for the most part, in the US, we still use 100-year-old methods of construction for homes, which essentially starts off as piles of bricks and sticks on the job site. And of course, this places significant limitations on architecture, where if you really look, I wouldn't say the quality of these homes hasn't improved. I'd say probably the opposite. I mean, there's more technology involved, and there are some advancements in kind of energy consumption and things like that. But for the most part, it hasn't been it hasn't taken advantage of technologies that are available to us. For me, it was in March of 2020 when the pandemic shook every aspect of our economy. And I was reading about housing shortages and developers struggling to keep up with demand for years prior. And I began thinking about prefab and thinking about modular and how can we apply luxury retail expertise and that conditioning to spaces for living. And it began as we learned about law changes in California and those streamlined the approval process for ADUs, additional dwelling units. And we started to create a prefab system for designing and building luxury ADUs, which was low-hanging fruit for us, or we thought of it as low-hanging fruit. And this led to theorizing a lot about how to address developers and would-be home builders' pain points in general. So we started searching for building methods that are an alternative to stick building that lifted the limitations on architecture. were precision manufactured for maximum control that could be installed quickly and easily and enhance the quality of life. So creating a better overall product and a space where people want to be in. So we came up with a concept that would rely on a combination of new and long existing systems and methods, and based our unit-based architecture that can be applied to everything that makes up a finished space, like wall panels, ceiling systems and panels, bathroom pods, flooring, partitions, and walls or wall finishes that can be demountable and replaced.
So thanks, Alex. Yes, definitely. We all keep forgetting, but the COVID was definitely a very challenging time for all of us, and many of us obviously took opportunities to spend time with our families and really find some ways to connect to people that maybe we haven't, but would also allow us to really think outside the box, and those also presented many different opportunities. So for us, it was a very similar approach where we needed to build for a client these pods, these glass pods that would actually be utilized for a public space that they wanted to bring people back, but they also wanted to provide safety and air and create open public spaces, and really thought outside the box. How do we create this approach to keeping the design, to utilizing as many possibly components on the interior that could already be prefabricated, and really bring all the light and all the air and everything inside this environment. So we approached it a bit differently, in a way where, as we said, this is the idea is this is a hybrid approach, right? So where, as you saw with Alex's designs, the idea is that you can truly expand these designs, but you're creating kind of a flat pack panels that already incorporate a lot of mechanicals, a lot of interior finishes right into these components, and then it becomes more of the assembly, installation, as Alex mentioned, versus really kind of a true traditional construction. We wanted to go even a step further, and in this aspect, because we did not need such large spaces as residential, and this was treated for a commercial, we focused on how do we minimize any installation on site, and how do we really control it all in the environment. So we created these glass volumes, glass cubes that were kind of resembling your shipping containers, which you've probably seen on maybe pop-ups, and some of the restaurants. But obviously, we wanted to bring that design, right? We wanted to bring the light, we wanted to bring the design, and build something beautiful and also interchangeable, right? So if you have a different tenant, whether it's a retail, whether it's a coffee shop, or whether it's a restaurant or a yoga studio, right? You really can easily interchange the material, create canopies, you can create sun protection, and really, bring in life into these otherwise, kind of empty lots, so to speak. So this was the final result of the actual, we utilized structurally glazed curtain wall, and really were able to kind of prefabricate these entire units. These were actually built for Miami-Dade, so we had to also deal with hurricane. So every piece of material that we used were actually pre-approved by Miami-Dade. We also have to have everything signed off at the factory for the engineering, for the electrical, for the plumbing. The kitchen equipment went inside. So really, really pushed the envelope. And then these units, as you can see, there's some hooks at the top where you can just basically rig them up and place them on the truck, on the tractor trailer. The only thing that was really demountable were those canopies, which would come off and be placed inside and then simply placed on top during installation.
Beautiful. So sometimes a little more flexibility is needed. So for some projects, hybrid means a little more labor, a little more intensity on the job site. But I believe that hybrid methods can be the way for making luxury more accessible, and with more focus on well-being and connection to nature, and accessible to more people and in further removed locations. I was actually, while we were developing our hybrid prefab system for luxury ADUs, that we recognized that a system like that could be ideal for building in larger scale and in remote locations and on sites with unique geographical features and climate challenges, etc. For example, Park City, Utah. It's a great ski resort area. I visit it often, but we know there's a limited seasonal construction period. And in Park City, they have the winter, and then they have the mud season. And that leaves a very short window within the year for construction of a weather-tight building envelope. Because that's really kind of step number one. You get a structure together and seal it off so that you can transition the work crews into the interior. Now, luxury and exclusivity sometimes go hand in hand with these hard to reach remote destinations like desert, mountain, beach. And of course, these locations always come with their own design challenges and some things that we need to solve for. Cold, heat, rain, thaw, extreme kind of conditions, geography. And of course, not to mention the availability of labor, materials, municipal infrastructure, and of course, accessibility for large vehicles with heavy equipment and crews that need to reach the site. Everyone is always looking for ways to shorten the window for on-site work, even in less extreme conditions. And we believe we can do that by leveraging prefab and modular. And we believe that we will have solved for much of the uncertainty stemming from climate and weather if we're able to execute the project, again, as an installation. And an installation of these pre-manufactured components that could be flat packed, or as Edward mentioned, fully assembled modules that are lifted into place with small cranes and secured into place by a small crew.
So in the next section, we're going to talk about design process and really which of the systems and assemblies are appropriate for the particular goal. So if you are dealing, with certain type of environment you're trying to create that's much larger and also very difficult to get to, as Alex mentioned, we would use obviously more of the hybrid approach, things that are more flat pack, but we can also combine it with the modular items, especially for the interior, right? So we can really look at it, how do we control the exterior environment, but how do we also treat most of this kind of, let's call it fixed furniture, right? Larger items that it traditionally were also just really be constructed on site. So how do we take that approach of the interior furniture? We've all seen furniture, we all have furniture in our houses, and we notice that the furniture has multiple materials. It has wood, it uses glass, it uses metal, it uses stone, right? And all of them are finely crafted and assembled and put together typically at the factory, and you receive this beautifully packaged item. So why can we not take that same approach to the interior applications of our homes, of our offices, and of hospitality environments. So we would treat this as a really precision systems, right? That you can just add inside now assembled exterior environment, but you also, it's pre-controlled. So you have adjustability in the height that you would deal with any kind of a field conditions. More importantly, the panels can be interchangeable. So imagine changing your environment and you're utilizing something in one color, and after a year or two you get tired and you want to change the environment, or you want to change the functionality, and you want to change the application, you can actually remove these panels and reconfigure and move them as well. So here are some examples of how that concept can really be used in the gallery. So imagine having a pop-up gallery, and instead of just being able to hang paintings on the wall, you can now really create this freestanding walls that just tighten, from floor to ceiling by pressure. And then the panels can be removable, the paintings can be removable. Then you have the functionality of the shelving and lighting all incorporated into these systems that can now really be integrated into this modular prefabricated design. And here are some additional examples of how you can utilize a similar concept in retail. And this is obviously something that, Alex and I have a lot of experience in retail. And how do you design with things in mind, right? How do you design where you will allow the retailer to have that flexibility if something doesn't work for them? Shelving, you may have designed what you think a perfect location for today. Tomorrow, their items are larger. Tomorrow, they want to refresh. They want to change the idea. So I think the concept of this interchangeability, is really great for, especially for retail and I think even homes.
Yes, and again, the spirit of applying our experience in retail and commercial and our conditioning in accommodating the clients, I think could very well be applied to large scale residential, as we mentioned earlier. And in this case, a flat pack prefab system concept that we came up with. We also focused on exploring principles of design for human-centered spaces from the inside out, with construction process that would deliver peace of mind to the owners in regard to time, cost, and quality. A key aspect of this is to limit the number of panels and to limit the number of components and types of components which have or would have fixed dimensions and maximize their use. We would minimize the occurrence of variable components, as well as minimize and solve for anything that needs on-site fitting. So this way, we leverage economies of scale, and this way, we take back the control. So in our research, we found a variety of high-performance, technologically advanced, renewable, sustainable materials. And these can be milled to fit together, unitized for flat pack transport, and repeated for economies of scale. These would provide better structural stability than the stick-built systems. They would also connect the end user to nature through biophilic material choices, and in this case, expansive panoramic exterior views. Now, all such materials, when assembled, they would create an energy efficient, airtight envelope. And this is where we can start to create an environment for fostering health, wellness, creativity. And with all interior components, including bathrooms like bathroom pods, millwork, built-in kitchen cabinets, closets, all of these can be designed and based on the same math, the same module, which would then fit within the matrix of the modules. And since we're starting out by setting the standard component and panel dimensions and proportions, and we are setting the design principles by which these would be arranged, we have an almost certainty that we will end up with a really well-proportioned space as a finished product.
So I think this is a good example of how, this kind of a hybrid approach comes together where, all of your exterior and all your walls could be flat pack, but then your interior cabinets, like the cabinet, like the closets, like the kitchens, can really be fully prefabricated and, again, fitting within the modules that you mentioned, but prefabricated to save even more time and money and control the schedule and cost and quality.
Yeah, that's correct. And again, control would be key here. In this system, the primary materials we selected are mass timber, structural insulated panels, metal roof insulated panels, and of course, lots of fixed and operable insulated glass units. Also, the interior finishes, as well as the exterior cladding, can be prefabricated, panelized, unitized, all based on the same math, and kind of lifted into place as a finished to achieve the finished product. Or sometimes the exterior cladding needs to be sourced locally and applied locally by local artisans. So if there's a certain architectural style that's preferred, or if there's a community board, and so the local community board requires a certain aesthetic. Then, like we mentioned earlier, taking it a step further would be to integrate technology and smart controls, things like that, plumbing, mechanical, etc., into the design and planning. And so we could pre-route, pre-drill these cavities, I'd say, as part of the milling process for the components. So we talk a lot about wellness and luxury, and we're intrigued by wellness and biophilia. And in short, the discipline of biophilic design addresses our body's reaction to natural stimulation and the way in which our well-being can benefit from connections to nature. So we know this in our lives, and science has shown how poorly designed spaces can increase anxiety and negatively impact relaxation, and how connecting the occupants to natural forms enhances mental and physical well-being. I think one of the most important principles in design is proportion of space. So we wanted to achieve ideal proportions, or close to ideal proportions. So we based the proportions of the components on the human, with the consideration of the human body, as well as following the tried and true golden ratio. However, we do need to keep in mind manufacturing, shipping parameters for a flat pack system.
Alex, I'm sorry. What is a golden ratio? Just for those who may not be aware.
The golden ratio is an ancient, I guess, an ancient mathematical equation that goes back thousands of years, probably to even pre-civilizations. And it is about the ideal proportions that is found in nature, like the human body, like the way trees grow branches and limbs. And I think even the number by which rabbits multiply. So it was an equation, a mathematical equation that was deduced, and ancient architects and artists, and I think till this day, started to apply it to their work.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. So we know so much of well-being and wellness goes hand in hand with sustainability. And knowing that one lives responsibly contributes to a sense of well-being. For example, mass timber as a structural and a finished material is made from engineered wood, which is a renewable, recyclable material. It's highly efficient building material. And in this case, it makes up the structure, but it, in and of itself, bears the wood grains and textures that are timeless and evoke and connect us to nature when we treat it as a finished surface. And the spectrum of these principles includes indirect connections to nature, like natural building forms, material colors, and textures found in nature, and of course, the golden ratio or the Fibonacci sequence. And then there is direct connection to nature, which is daylighting, temperature, airflow variability, and blurring the lines between indoors and outdoors.
I would agree with you, Alex, very much. I mean, we are obviously involved with a lot of various materials, such as glass and metal and woods and stone, and often we are just tasked to create these beautiful materials, but not always that we are part of the design process of how these materials really will integrate into the finished environment. And I think you nailed it by saying, you know, how materials are as important as the design and architecture to really create this environment, especially if you want to connect it to biophilia, and how do we connect them to nature? So how do we bring the nature? As you alluded, part of it is obviously glass. Glass could be reflective, glass could be transparent. How do we bring the light in? How do we ensure that we're getting the outdoor environment, you know, reflected in our indoor environment? How do we bring in materials that are using natural materials? How do we use recycled materials? How do we use these beautiful colors and textures and textiles? How do we make it the textile where you're touching it and you're feeling something? So I think, you know, we're always on the hunt to create, be influenced by designers like you, to be influenced, you know, and create some beautiful materials. But I think understanding that how does this really affect the human nature? How does it affect our, you know, day-to-day interaction with these environments, I think is very important. And another piece, how you can do it, besides the colors and textures and the light, is really also patterns, right? So we kind of always go in life, you know, without really, you know, understanding how the patterns affect us. But I think if you bring the patterns that are associated with nature, with outdoors, and really not perfect, you know, there's a concept called wabi-sabi, which is just things that are not perfected, right? It's a Japanese concept, and you're trying not to be perfect. So how do we make it where it's not perfect? So obviously architecture has to be perfect, it has to be solid, has to be engineered, but now you can add these beautiful materials and graphics and patterns that really remind us that, you know, our world is not perfect, far from perfect, and it's okay.
Yes, Edward and I have a couple of case studies that we'd like to share as well. So this is a house where we're currently implementing a hybrid approach. It's a high-end residential construction that combines traditional methods with prefabricated systems. It's just outside of Park City. The hybrid approach, which we really need here, allows us to meet the very specific architectural criteria of an existing community. And so we needed to implement some traditional methods because some traditional architectural features are required by the community. However, in planning the project, we're maximizing the offsite fabrication components and minimizing, or trying to minimize the construction on site as much as possible. So leveraging prefabricated systems, we know will tremendously reduce construction time on the project site from years to just a few months. The site features a 30% slope, which makes it a bit challenging, but a great candidate for this hybrid solution and for implementing some of the design principles we talked about. It's a 3-level home, and we wanted to make it at once dramatic and welcoming and expansive and intimate, while blurring the lines between indoors and outdoors. And so we have these great facades of vast transparencies facing the mountains, and terraces that are like extensions of interiors. And in our approach, we're able to achieve very large spans of glass, floor to ceiling, and optimize sight lines that capture the incredible views we have on this site. Our pitch to the developer was delivery of an exceptional product of superior quality that feels bespoke and personalized because we control every detail, thanks to precision engineering. And most importantly, the delivery methods offers predictability in cost and schedule and requires less time on site. And the prefabricated systems require fewer specialized trades that one would need to manage on site. And it is that level of control over the results that was most attractive to them.
So this is a case study of a harbor club, recently completed and opened a private club in Miami, and which had 2 restaurants, 3 separate bars, lounges, and as we all experience in our careers, we do realize budgets are always, always really, the designers draw beautiful designs, and we see this all the time. But then once you get the budget, unfortunately, the reality doesn't make it a reality. So we're always here to find creative ways of how to do it. And some ways are through obviously engineered solutions and different ways, methodology of how to save money with the product itself. But then the other ways, how do you save money on labor and having this predictability, not just in materials, but really prefabricating. So we wanted to, again, to utilize this unitization approach, but still keep this luxurious feel of where the design intent was. So here you'll find some examples of entire bar sections, which were actually designed and prefabricated fully at the factory. So you're seeing here, a plaster, you're seeing architectural metal inserts, you're seeing stone. There's obviously a ton of equipment behind. So all of this was pre-designed. Obviously, it took time to coordinate all the equipment and ensure that all the dimensions would work out. But more importantly, is not being afraid of a challenge of dimensions. And even though this is an interior space and this is an existing building that we don't have wide entries and wide hallways, we were still able to really take it outside the box and say, why can we treat it as furniture? And that's exactly what we did. So these entire sections, up to 30 feet long, were fabricated and actually rigged onto the site. Here you can see now how really this beautiful space came together, and the same way you have the banquettes and couches and tables, the same way we were able to approach these large scale installations of the bars. So here's another example of the bar already integrated with LED lighting, with glass, with bronze, with marble. All of this was fully prefabricated, including these hanging shelves in the back and these beautiful curved colored textured glass columns. And here's the last but not least, this is another bar upstairs, which includes this beautiful red mahogany, high gloss wood with bronze inserts, with bronze foot rail that had to be engineered, obviously, for stability, with marble tops, hanging shelves, integrated LED lighting. So really, I want you to walk away today thinking, okay, status quo is no longer the way we do construction, and we really have to be able to just push the envelope and think outside the box of how we can look at the traditional construction.
Guys, thank you for being with us. We hope you enjoyed the presentation.
Thank you very much again for the opportunity. Really, we're excited to be here and share this insight with you. Thank you. Have a great NeoCon.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this session. Before logging off, please complete the 10-question quiz via the Take Quiz button. Remember to hit submit. Once completed, for AIA members, attendance is recorded and reported for 1 LU or HSW credits. For IDCEC members, attendance is self-reported. For any questions, please contact NeoCon CFP@themark.com.